isn't it? Good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon, isn't it? It's Monday. Folks, I'd like to welcome you to Trinity today, to our business school. We are going to kick off Trinity Innovation Week with Dr. Michelle Olmsted, our Chief Innovation and Enterprise Officer.
Thank you, Dave. This is the first Innovation Week for Trinity, and we're very excited to have an excellent speaker today. Elliott will be introduced in a moment, but I wanted to talk about what Rates is all about. So I'm going to go through a few slides for those learners that are a different style than just talking at you. But this is a very exciting week for us. We have an award ceremony from some of the hard work of the researchers in Trinity and education specialists here later this week. And we have a lot of activities on this floor to enable and activate those things. So please come back around to us and look at the schedule that's online if you are a Trinity employee. We have lots of things to offer to you this week. And obviously do come at other times as well as you meet some of our team. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. We have a fairly new management team in place. The last of those was hired this last week, actually started last week. So we've had some promotions internally, and I just want to introduce our management team with the three other directors in my office. So I'll ask them all to stand if that's all right. So first we have Neil Gordon, who's the new director of Portal. And we'll talk a bit more about Portal, but you are in a Portal space now, recently promoted. We have then Nessa McNiff, and she's also been recently promoted to Managing Director of Learnovate. And we have Vincent Cool, who's the Director of Connects, the Knowledge Exchange group within Trinity. So we're very excited for a lot of new and different changes that we have going on in our units and our spaces, which is where you are now. So what do? We have a very broad and wide definition of innovation here. And it is really the implementation of improved ideas, managed knowledge and practices. That does not mean that it's only about commercializing STEM work. It does mean that we include all faculties, all schools, and all interdisciplinary work. And these spaces like the one you're in today is very important to that innovation work, where we can bring interdisciplinary activities together and we can enable public and private partnerships, which is the way of the future for innovation, especially in higher ed. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about definitions here, and you can see the enterprise definition, which is project or business undertaking, especially bold or complex. So we are the ones here that sort of try to push you a bit further and bring different kinds of people together. Whether it's an artist with a doctor of medicine or a lawyer with a behavioral scientist. There's a lot of things that we need to do in these spaces for the future and the vulnerabilities that are in the world today. So then I'll just go on a little bit to talk about Portal, the Knowledge Exchange, and Learnovate. So I'm the Chief Innovation and Enterprise Officer here, but we have three large organizations within that unit, which include the innovation in education, innovation in research, and entrepreneurship, which you can see are divided into three areas. We have a little over 100 or 120 employees that are really here to help you navigate innovation and enterprise in Trinity, and also bring in those government, nonprofit, and commercial industry partners that help us to elevate our research and our education further. So I won't talk in detail about each of these, but you can certainly find the team members that are here today and throughout the week to talk more about the activities of each of these areas and continue on with some of the activities of the week. So we are financed 50% through grant funding, through Research Ireland and Enterprise Ireland, and 50% from paid activities where we bring in funding or we commercialize activities externally. So those are important things for the activities that we do around copyrights, patents, licenses, spin-outs, startups, and other activities that we have within these spaces on campus. So just to talk a little bit about the spaces, this floor of the business school is under the Innovation and Enterprise remit, specifically to enable activities around innovation and enterprise in all faculties and schools, and not just specific to the business school. We have a brand new building opening up under Neil's remit in Trinity East, which is Grand Canal Quay, in 2025. So we're very excited to open more facilities for this enablement and activating spaces, and these spaces are really important to us because many of the schools and faculties don't have as much space to provide this interdisciplinary work and the work with the external partners we have. So you will see more of these spaces coming to Trinity, which is exciting, and you'll hear more of that during the Innovation Week and further along. So then, what else are we doing? Well, we're trying to mature innovation in the university. That's a very scary thing for most people, I think. We have a lot of activities going on in Trinity. We have huge opportunities. We're in a change environment in the world. And there's certainly more maturity that we can have through all of our activities with all of you. So do help us in looking at how to mature the innovation life cycle within Trinity, and that means looking at new opportunities with interdisciplinary activities. That means potentially more opportunities and spin-outs and other kinds of social and economic impacts from the university. So we are in an area of growth in the university, and we do have some maturity to go as we go along. In another setting, we will talk about maturity models, which some of you may be interested in around innovation, but we'll do that in a separate session at another time. So I know this is a lot of information for you, but just wanted to talk a little bit about what we do here and recognize all the team that are here and still working in their offices now to activate these activities around the campus and with our external partners. So with that, we're going to start today's program, and I think I'm going to have it next back to Dave.
Thank you, Michelle. So folks, Dave Farley, Head of Membership Services at Learnovate. We are delighted to host this event as part of Trinity Innovation Week. Great to see so many Learnovate members here, so many guests and wider Trinity colleagues, so you're all very welcome. We are delighted to have Elliott Masie join us this afternoon, and Dr. Anne Devitt, who I am sure are going to have a very lively conversation. So I am literally going to pass straight over to Elliott and Anne and get the conversation started.
There you go. Can you hear me? Yeah. Ooh, better. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And just to echo her intro, my name's Elliott Masie. It is an honor to be here. I am in my 53rd year in the world of learning and ed technology. And my wife, Kathy, and I are here as part of a learning fellowship that we're doing right now. And my focus has primarily been about how do we add technology to the learning process in a way that it optimizes the educational process and experience. And when I'm not doing that, you might see by my sneakers, we are also Broadway producers, having produced 44 Broadway shows, including Kinky Boots and other ones. So we're here both to work with Learnovate and to do a little bit of research and a little bit of theater. So I'm honored to be here. So
Yeah,
let's take it away.
it's going to be a fun conversation. Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So I guess just to start off, I was thinking about asking you, you've 53 years, that's a long time in the field of educational technology. What is motivating you at the moment? Like what are the real interests that are driving your thinking about this at the moment?
There are three. And by the way, we didn't rehearse, plan, or the like, and I get to ask her a question or two along the way. My first one is the word that I'm using, which is how do we optimize the learning process? I mean, you've all been in a learning situation where perhaps the professor was going faster or slower than you were, or perhaps you already took that class, but the curriculum is there, or perhaps you don't understand something, or perhaps you need context or the like. So I'm intrigued on how do we optimize, and that's where the fullest range of not only learners, but humans in their jobs, in their lives, in their families, in their society. The second piece is how do we extend learning to places that it's not naturally going to. I'll give you the extreme. My wife and I have worked very strongly with a woman who had a murder note put on her door in Afghanistan 5 days before the country shut down, okay? And we were helping her get out. And she is working on the area of gender apartheid, because right now in Afghanistan, there are all sorts of young women living in basements who can't go to school. What if they could learn online? It wouldn't fix what was wrong, but that's the extreme political side. But there are other sides of somebody can't afford to go to university, or they went to university and they didn't get the degree that helps them do what they want to do in life. And so how do we extend it? The third piece is probably what tickles me the most, is how do we move learning from a chapter to a lifelong process? Because to me, the most exciting thing, I was just with a wonderful set of physicians, and we were talking about medical education. The best doctor is one who every day is learning, who every day is stretching, who every day wants to have a conversation with not only another doctor, but what we were just talking, but maybe with a mathematician, or maybe with an artist or the like. So I'm really intrigued in seeing what learning can be if we move it out of just the education chapter into the ultimate lifelong chapter. And I think ultimately societies and communities and individuals and families that really get to lifelong learning are going to be the most healthy, successful, and exciting places to be.
And maybe on that note, we're looking at, lifelong learning. Sometimes you think about, oh my God, my brain is full, I can't fit anymore. Or like sometimes you're dying to reach out into new territory. And we were talking, when we were kind of preparing for this about engagement. So like without, the baseline for any learning is to want it, to be engaged in it. And I suppose on the tech side, what would you see as being really valuable that can drive that engagement, that can support that for learners?
I am excited, and this is not a product that's out there yet, and I'm not a product person, so I have no stake in this, but I'm really excited about what ultimately smart tutors might be, where literally if I were learning something either on the job or as part of a process, or even I'm now visiting a city that I've never been in before, that we can go from the sort of Google Bing search where we get a list to where I can say, I'm in Dublin. Have you ever been there before? Well, what do you want to do in Dublin? And now I'm in a dialogue that will connect me both to, in the AI world, large language models, but in a real sense to say, there's a man sitting in the second row who understands theater, you should talk to him. Because it's not just getting it online, but it's connecting in that. And then I'm really intrigued with the data side of learning, where we can get enough information as teachers, as administrators, or as learners to better understand how to optimize our own learning process. Because what's interesting is, my wife and I work together and we're equally smart, but we're totally different as learners. And part of it is we have data about what we enjoy or don't enjoy, or where we optimize or don't. I'm not sure we give our learners enough data about how they learn or how they could get stimulated differently or stretch or alternative. So I'm intrigued. I'm following the work that Sal Khan has done with Khan Academy. And there's some great work going on around the world about leveraging technology like our phone, but not as an AI replacement. But once again, how do we optimize that learning moment? And I get excited if it's connected to visual, to data with permission, and to resources, and even to proximity to other knowledge that might be near me in that process.
And I suppose, what do you think is likely to land soon in those terms, and what is kind of still out there? It's hard to know, I guess, things change so fast.
The one thing to track, and I've been very intrigued that there's not been as much written about that, has been how online search is being transformed by AI. So historically, you did a search and you got a list. And I remember it was interesting. I went to a Wall Street Journal conference I was at. I was one of the speakers there. And it was so long ago when they had a table of the sort of senior entrepreneurs that were there, and Bill and Melinda Gates and Steve Jobs and others were there. And the Google founders were at the kids' table because Google wasn't big enough at that time for them to be at that table. But if you think about what Google and Bing have done, is you do a search and now you get a list that's not really based on what we know, but that, and it's been economically stacked. So I can buy my way into that. You're going to watch that AI is going to transform that. And by the way, it's going to be an economic challenge in a way for those organizations. But I think we're going to see search as the most immediate view that will change. And I think we'll see a lot of it in 25 change. And I think the other bits that are going to change in the learning world are going to be the world of assessment. And we talked a little bit about that. How do we build an assessment that's dynamic, that's motivating, that doesn't just tell you whether you got the answer right or wrong, but do you understand the context of it? And I love another one. I taught a course years ago at Columbia, and I would literally ask students to give me not only their answer, but their degree of confidence that it was right. So that I built it into their grade. They had to be pretty accurate about when they were accurate in that process. But how do we think about assessment becoming more like simulation and interaction and the like, so that not only do we help the learner, but once again, we help the institution optimize what they are doing. What do you think will be the next landing gear as turning our tables here?
I think that a really useful, really valuable thing is on sorting out feedback. I think there's potential for that to happen. soon. I see somebody who's working on it right there with Learnovate. But I do think, you know, where you get a combination of something that can generate text that's meaningful and that's responding to, this is you know, an AI issue, I suppose, but something that can respond to input and produce output, feedback that is meaningful to a learner. Like that is possible now, I think. And it's probably the most expensive, the most time consuming, you know, the biggest difficulty I think that educators have is being able to provide enough feedback for the learners. And it's what learners always say is the most valuable. Yeah. So, you know, they want timely feedback. They want feedback that's, it's not even necessarily about it being 100% accurate, really, like feedback. So not about grading, but, you know, it's about kind of getting that gist of, you know, you're doing this well, but you could be doing that better. And I think that's what people find helpful. And they find it helpful at the moment when they're producing stuff, not like 2 months or 3 months after you've finished, which is the usual, you know, certainly in the university context, that's often what happens. So I think that that is valuable and possible.
And I'll add to that. I also think we need to figure out how to make our learning processes challenging and sometimes even more challenging. When I got up here, I looked down and I saw all sorts of students downstairs at tables with their laptops open, and they were obviously working on cases. And I said to David, I'm a mingler. So I went down and I picked a random table and I sat down at it, you know, and they were a little shocked, that probably by my jacket more than anything. And then by my accent. And I explained I was doing the talk upstairs and I didn't want to eat the good cakes. So I came down to ask them a question. And they all took out paper and pencil because they were ready to do that. And they seemed between excited, nervous, and one of them was going to run to the bathroom. You know? And I said, well, being an American and being here in Ireland right now, I have a question for you. If Trump has tariffs that come in, how might it change the health of the very robust pharmaceutical manufacturing environment in Ireland? What do you think that would be as business leaders?
I thought you were going to ask them an easy question.
No, but that was just it. But that was just it. Now, I will tell you, it ranged from, oh crap, was one of their reactions, to one of them, eyes lit up. Why? Because one of their relatives worked in the West in a pharmaceutical environment. And one of them said, is there a right answer? I said, I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm asking you. I'm at the business school here. And it was an interesting 15 minutes of back and forth. But how do we make our learning process that edgy, challenging, real-time, not punitive, because I wasn't trying to trap them. I was doing what I think every educator does. I was trying to engage them. And I think engagement is, once again, we don't understand how important it is when we learn something that we can articulate it or maybe verbalize it with somebody else to see if we got it or not. Yeah.
I think what you're saying, it's just knitting a couple of things together there about engagement, about like things that are real world and have real relevance, and then also the feedback part. Like ideally we just want to learn because we want to learn, but how do you kind of balance that with the fact that most learners in a formal context need to be very strategic, like they need the grade or they need the award in order to do something. Like, so is there some, you know, how can you balance that intrinsic value of learning with?
It's the ultimate design piece of that. And one of the things I get most concerned about when people talk about, well, I'll just ask AI to design the class, you know, the way people say, I'll have AI write that article. And I had one student send me an article they wrote about, and a third of it was by me in the middle. But, you know, and I wasn't mad. I just was disappointed that they didn't know they were giving it to the person who wrote it in that process. But I think there's a wonderful area of design that I think is an opportunity, not only for what you do in the education world, but what we're doing here in the innovation world, to think about how do we design learning experiences that are what you just decided, that are taken. They could be strategic, they could be challenging. I'm a big believer that project-based learning does that when we're building something, when we're deconstructing something, we get at that. And then some of it is adding efficiency to that, which is where data comes in. You know, what are the bits that I don't need to know at a memory level, but I need to know how to get to them? Navigational. So for instance, the GPS has reduced what I know about getting to places, you know, and we have a flat that's like 4 blocks from here, and the GPS got us here perfectly during that process, meaning I'm not loading into my brain the map of Dublin. I'm using my GPS in a way. There are other things I'd rather think about. How do we best think about optimizing learning with that right mix? But we are going to need designers. We're going to need educational experience designers who understand data, who understand behavioral science, who understand learning, and you're, you know, an advocate for a good structured approach to learning, and even understand when we're doing too much and it's not working. And we've all been in a place where somebody starts a lecture with a story that lasts 22 minutes, and then they get to slides, and you keep waiting because you know they're the brightest person you'll ever meet, but their download doesn't map to what you need as your input in that process. How do we give them feedback? I mean, I know that my watch is good. It measures my pulse and my blood oxygen content. And I'm always kind of looking at my watch. I wish it had a teaching wellness monitor. You've told that story 3 times this week. Okay, stop and let them say something, or the like. Yeah.
Or the classic lecture line, I'm not going to go into this, but.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Yeah. I got the and it's being taped, it doesn't matter. I got the professors at Wharton quite upset. I was an adjunct and they were coming into a PhD program, and they were giving their, 1 hour and a half or 2 hour piece, and they would bring 75 slides. And these were people in a PhD level who were paying over $100,000 to be in the program. And I was their sort of academic coordinator. And I would say, 20 minutes, shut up, and then they're going to ask you questions. And they looked infuriated until the end of the class, and they said, wow, that was the best class I've taught in a while. So storytelling is also knowing when to stop, or when we're telling too much, or when to engage you in that process.
Maybe I'll ask you something. As I was thinking about this, we had an interview for a drama in education lecture on Friday. Met some great people at that. And one of the things that I was thinking about a lot, just sitting there, and I thought I have to ask Elliott this now because of your Broadway background and all the rest. Technology always feels like it's just your brain, It's just your, maybe your fingers a little bit, but it's really just what's in your head. What do you think about, and this kind of links, I suppose, to that idea of project-based learning or doing just real world, connecting into the real world. What do you think technology, what are the possibilities, or what are we losing, I suppose, maybe about embodied learning, the kind of thing that happens because you're physically in a place and with others and so on? Like what's possible there?
I think it's a risk. We had a conversation with surgeons, and I gave a story about a nursing student who was concerned because the people around them were studying an online class, passing the test, but they didn't think were becoming better nurses in that process because they were passing the test cognitively, but they weren't really passing it by engagement in that so I worry. And I worry that educational institutions, maybe not Trinity or the like, will end up deciding a very high profit, cost effective way of doing things is to turn it into broadcasting. And broadcasting is fine, but it's not learning. You know, I might go on to YouTube to watch an interesting video. I probably don't watch it to the end. I might go in and want to take and see a webinar, but I might put it at 1.5 speed or jump to the key bits in that. So I worry that we actually are submissive, too submissive, when our learning is ed tech. Okay, because I think what it really should be, I think the ed should be big, and tech is just one of the Lego blocks that we fit into it. And I believe that there is going to be a whole new world of designer. I said it before, and it's behavioral design. How do we really understand cognitively what happens with a learner in that process? When does a learner have too much? When do they need a gap to process it? When do they need to cognitively rehearse it with another individual? And then we get to a really interesting point, and it goes way back to one of the things I'm excited about. How much is their educational, cultural, even national or religious DNA shaping how they learn? Because when we teach the same class around the world, you get a very different reaction in Vietnam than you do in Germany, than you do in Brazil. And they're all good learners. But if you don't map that their cognitive DNA is structured differently, so how do we how do we optimize for that? In the same way, I wish when I went to a restaurant that with permission that my smart Bluetooth told them what I was allergic to. Rather than every waiter and waitress asking me, I wish it lit up with my permission that it was there. That's how do we use technology to optimize it? Can I ask you a question?
Go for it. Let's keep an eye on time.
Okay.
Do you have the time? Just so we're not running.
It's half
past. Okay. Perfect.
When you think of all of the evolutions of Ireland, particularly with the, I heard about the Innovation Center maybe over in the dock area with all the things. How do you think the infusion of all these new jobs and opportunities is going to change by opportunity or challenge education in Ireland?
That's a very, hard one. I think historically we've done well in Ireland on the education side because it's highly valued. People see education as a pathway to success or whatever you're going to call it. I don't know that that's. I think that is lasting, as in I think it's basically we've got no raw materials here at all except ourselves. So and the countryside, like the kind of food raw materials, but we're very low. So I think as a kind of nationally be aware that it's us that bring the value. So there is a value to that education. I think the systems have always been not have always been, but certainly at the moment are quite committed to lifting all boats at the education system. But I don't think that it works necessarily, especially when you're looking at, you're looking at jobs disappearing and, new jobs appearing and who is it who's going to have the skills to do that? I do, like, as a nation, we typically focus on what's going to, the kind of economic imperative for education. We do that, definitely. And we try to do that for all. But I think we're going to, areas where there's never been enough is around IT and technology, even engineering and design. I think we probably don't leverage enough the kind of creative sectors that can inform all of the, the innovation and design. Like, I suppose in my lifetime, I've seen things improve. We seem to have gone from being really static in the kinds of things that we think about to being much more dynamic and moving things ourselves as opposed to waiting for the inward investment and so on. But I think we have to, like anywhere else, you know, success or when you're doing well, it's fragile. So you have to be sure that you keep your focus. So we've focused for a long time in Ireland on literacy, and we've done, like, people are coming to visit school in Ireland because you're doing literacy so well, you know, how are you doing it? And everyone's going, I don't know, you know, partly. But, you know, there's money behind that and there's energy behind that. And we just have to keep the focus, I think. But yeah.
And let me leverage on top of that, because I was very excited at the beginning as we were introduced, this concept that we're at an innovation week and we're in an innovation space here. And I actually think what's exciting about EdTech, what's exciting about what Learnovate is doing, what's exciting about what billions of dollars of investment that are going in around is how we innovate in that world of education, okay? But I want you to think about that innovation. Innovation doesn't mean a whole bunch of venture companies. It might be, they might be part of it. Innovation doesn't mean we come up with an app to eliminate something. Maybe we might, but innovation is really about experimentation. How do we experiment? What nobody talks about, I've been a judge of some innovation labs similar to what you've done here at Trinity, is 2 or 3 might make it and 20 don't. Now, is that a failure, or is that similar when you go to the Olympics? Some people get medals and others don't, and they come back in 4 years and they get them better. I think where you have in Ireland, which is a wonderful by size and scale, is opportunity for experiment in the innovation around education. What works? Now, does it work with everyone? No. What works with and it's different, I've seen it. If you have somebody who's 45 coming into a program, than if they're coming in at 19 in that sense. What do we even know about the cognitive differences of that? Or even we talked about how do we blend the arts into that? Because if we're honest, if I don't, do we have 5 minutes left? Or we?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay, do me a favor. Turn to your neighbor for a second. I'm going to break rules here. Okay, I want you to talk about your favorite teacher of all time and why they are there. And you've got 3 minutes to do it. Your favorite teacher or instructor of all time. Okay, go.
One of the things that we do really badly here in Ireland, just when you were saying that, is we're so afraid in the education system, especially at second level. Whatever, but once you get to second level, they just Do you remember your favorite teacher?
Yeah, what?
Do you remember your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher was Mrs. Ann, who realized that I had something of a ADHD background, and put me in charge of completely erasing, delivering cookies, and the like.
It was the woman who used to teach Italian. She's head of Italian here. She is just very elegant, and she just made it feel like you're entering something new.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Let's have you back.
Welcome back. And I broke the rule, but it's okay. How many of you chose somebody who was funny? How many of you chose somebody who was very good at the blackboard or whiteboard or the like? How many of you chose somebody who seemed to care about you? Okay, and what I'm trying to get at is we need to start to understand what are the instructors or the learning experiences that really work for us. And they may actually be different. I'm hoping that we, in addition, I don't know if you're doing it here, but I think it's wonderful if somebody at age 19 or 20 wants to become a teacher, okay? I'd love to get some people who at age 50 are ready to go back into the classroom.
We have a lot on our program, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm interested in getting artists to engage, in getting scientists to engage. How do we do that? And part of what I'm framing here is you are in a uniquely right-sized country for innovation. If you understand that innovation is experimentation, and if you accept that when it doesn't work, it's not failure, it's part of the growth process to get there. And it'll ruffle some feathers along the way, but you know.
I think for those who've come through the Irish system of education, we can probably say the Irish secondary system is terrified of change, I think. Just generally really frightened. And you'd get some schools that would be great and teach, individuals and so on. But I think it's at the other end, like it's nearly, whereas the Irish primary system is, they're the one, they can kind of do, they're much freer in what they do. So, but the reason for it is that we have a really, really high stakes assessment that is for the most part written. And if there was freedom from that.
Yeah, and I'm not here to change your system, but I will tell you, I've worked with many organizations, including United States Secret Service and others, to think about that assessment doesn't have to be a one afternoon exam, but could be in some ways digitally contiguous, which means imagine if 3 times a week somebody had a 15-minute block or case study and that aggregated up into stuff. So I actually think the hardest thing to do is to experiment with change. And you might have to do it as what I call a parallel experiment. You don't stop doing A, but alongside of it, you try B. And somewhere in between, there is a blend of it. But when you hear Learnovate talk about innovation, it's not about somebody going out to make €1 billion. If they do it, great, okay? But most of the really successful people that I know, who in fact became billionaires, my friend John Abele, okay? He wanted to figure out how do we keep people alive longer with some heart problems. And he started Boston Scientific, okay, to bring in stents and laparoscopics and the like in that process. Or even you take a look at Bill Gates in that sense. And Bill was just really interested, and I was the host of Microsoft Television. And Bill was really interested in this little computer. How might it, believe it or not, how might it actually help people perform better at their job? And I hate to go way back into history, but some of you are old enough to remember the name Grace Hopper. She was an admiral in the Navy who named the mainframe computer. And literally, when asked, what was the thing that computers will do someday? Help our sailors get smarter every day. That was her image, literally, okay, in the 1950s of what technology would be. So I think innovation is the most amazing thing, but you've got to be willing to experiment. They don't all have to end up in an LLC that becomes a unicorn. They can actually be a few students or a few students and faculty that are experimenting together. And it's part of that scientific process of you try it and maybe it works, or maybe we'd have to do it a little bit different. The final piece that I would say is storytelling. And so that's why we're Broadway producers. Because when you talked about your favorite instructor, whether it was her or him, whether they were perfect in academics, they probably were excellent storytellers. Whether it be storytelling to a class or seeing that one student isn't getting it and sitting down with them. We have many friends in the theater world, okay? And we have one friend, you've probably seen him on Glee, he was Aladdin, Telly Leon, okay? And Telly's parents migrated from China, they swam across the way, and all they wanted him to do in life is to become a doctor. All he wanted to do is become a doctor. And when he told them, when he was 19 years old, that he wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon to become an actor, they said, oh my gosh, you're never going to be a doctor and the like. And then a little bit later, when he went on Broadway, oh, maybe. And then, okay, when he actually got nominated for awards and the like, but every time that along the way, he didn't do what they expected of him, they were also very proud of him. So knowing that our learners have something inside that we can light up, and we might light it up natively when we're younger, or we might light it up natively later on. But that's what ed tech is. That's what, and I don't even want to call it ed tech. That's what education is. That's what you do you prepare the basis of what Ireland's education is going to be going forward. And I'm hoping that it's innovation, because innovation is looking at how do we make a better tomorrow, not by adding just technology, but great design and great outcomes for people and the like. So one last little thing. Was David?
Time,
Five, okay,
minutes, yeah.
but one little weird favor I'm going to ask. So my wife and I are locating here in 2025, between here and the United States. And we are looking to make some new friends and colleagues, okay? So we're dying to have lunch or dinner or a cup of coffee with you. Now, don't all come up at once, but okay. But I'm simple to get at. It's masie.com or Masie at Masie. But I'm very serious. We would love to build a collection of people to know and think about in that world. And the one piece that I'm most interested in thinking about, how will the learners change as we add technology? And you sort of asked that big question. So how does that learner change when we give her an online course rather than natively? Or what happens when that learner gets confused? What do they do with that? Or when they wake up one day and they realize the career I've done for 25 years, I'm going to live to be 90. I'm going to need a second career. How do they reshape, retool, and the like? So I'm dying to have conversations with folks in Dublin about that. I'll bump back to you then.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, just when you were saying that about the reshaping, so some of the work in Learnovate around with Solus and so on is looking at that, the transformative power, I guess, of different aspects, of learning and, how, in different aspects like digital skills and so on. But it's all that experimentation part, which is hard. You need someone to help you do it, and I think that's certainly where Learnovate comes in like it's a safe space or whatever. It's a secure space in which to try things out and to run with stuff. I definitely think that's how we're all going to change.
Don't know.
God knows.
Don't know.
I might open it up to the floor if anybody has some questions for Elliott that they would. Yeah.
So beyond the education system, beyond the formal education system, so when people are in the workplace, what do you think the incentive is for people to engage in learning or lifelong learning, as you're saying?
I'm going to say something very provocative here. And I'm going to quote the work of two really good colleagues of mine, Bob Mosier and Conrad Gottfredson, who have talked a lot about learning at the moment of need. Because what we've actually found, the hardest thing is to learn if I have nothing no place to do what I'm learning. But when I get to the workplace, the moment that I have a learning need is when something goes wrong, when something fails, when the system changes, when my boss changes, when the customer changes. And what Mosier and Gottfredson have talked a lot about is the rise of what we would call workflow support, or I like to call nudges, okay, a nudge. And what I mean by a nudge is that all day long, your system suggests to you something that might be a helpful moment, beyond just spell check popping in to say you have it wrong. But imagine if you literally got a few minute nudge along the way, and then ladders. And what a ladder means is that you look at something you're curious about, and it gives you a ladder of how you could then go and get better at it. Once again, you're going to see in the AI world, you'll see it from Claude, you'll see it from Gemini, and you'll see it from Copilot. They're soon going to have the ability for you to say, how best could I learn? And what it'll do is it'll suggest, here's a video you could watch, a conversation you could have, or even a simulation you could try. Here's the biggest problem. You've got to be in a workplace, ideally, where your employer wants you to get smarter, not fearful that if you do, you'll leave. Or you've got to create a lifestyle that allows you to work and then do that learning when you get home or on the weekend or the like in that sense. But I actually think we're going to have to, the biggest disruptor, and it will in fact impact some of what goes on over by the docks, will be computer coding as we know it will change so radically by the introduction of 2 or 3 level high-end coding systems, so that the tens of thousands of coders we have are going to have a very different role. Doesn't mean their jobs are going away, but they're going to not be the line-by-line writers. They're going to have to be more behavioral and more engineering and the like. So I'm looking, ideally, once again, that's what innovation is. How do we make sure in Ireland that as coding changes, you're not a remnant of what was, but that you're faster to retrain, redeploy, and reformat. EdTech started in Ireland, if you know it or not. This was the original place where relational courseware and SmartForce, and I came here decades ago and gave an award to the Taoiseach on that. And then coding got more expensive here, and a lot of it went to India, and things shifted. But how do we get ready? What's that role of innovation? To look at today, to figure out what we have to do to prepare for tomorrow, whether it be at a global level or at Sharon, or Mark. How do we get those folks, man?
And on that note of looking towards the future and tomorrow, we're at time, I think. So we might call it a day. I'll hand over to
Thank you.
Netta.
My only job is to say thank you to these fabulous people. It was an absolute delightful conversation, and we're very lucky to have been part of this and experienced it. Elliott, you're wonderful. You're a masterful storyteller. You talk about storytelling all the time. You are the epitome of what a good storyteller is. Thank you. You're so generous with your time, with your energy, your knowledge, your experience. Thank you for supporting us here today. And Anne, as always, academic director, you're such a wonderful support for Learnovate. Thank you for your time, your energy. And that was just, AI is wonderful and it's going to do wonderful things, but you can never replicate a conversation like that. There's something intangible about humans and charisma. Red jackets, rock. And all your lovely energy today. Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. Louise is going to put up a QR code. I'm going to move out of the way. This is the start of Trinity Innovation Week. We're delighted at Learnovate to have opened it. There's events all week. We're about all week. We are here in the business school as Learnovate, I think 10 to 12, Tuesday and Wednesday. So you're very welcome to join. If there's any more information anybody'd like, there's a QR code and it will come. There's an agenda there. Thank you, everybody, and sincere thank you to both of you today. Thanks very much.
That was fun.
Yeah, so you pointed to your wife, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, Kathy. Italian. Oh. All right, I thought we could.